Yeah, welcome everyone who's just joining us to Newegg Studios again. We have the guys from Zotac here looking at some really cool products. Obviously, the launch of the 1080 Ti happened recently, and Zotac, for people who don't know, is the only company in North America that just makes graphics cards and not motherboards, which I think puts it in an interesting position to really focus on doing some really crazy graphics cards. Like, for example, the 1080 Ti Amp Extreme that we have in this system here. It is a huge, beastly card, and it has some crazy performance. So tell us a little bit about like the intro of this card, what it's about, like what was the objective, and kind of what the response has been in the market.
Sure. Thanks for the intro. I just wanted to do a little small correction. We actually only manufacture NVIDIA graphics cards, but we do make other products like our little gaming mini PCs here as well as part of Zotac. But here you do see our TI Amp Extreme, and what we typically do or want to do for our cards is to make one of the fastest graphics cards that's available on the market where you can buy it just out of the box. And that's the case here with the 1080 Ti Amp Extreme. So without any tweaking or any touching with the software or modding necessary, you're simply going to get the fastest performance on a single graphics card you can buy on a 1080 Ti on the market currently.
That's pretty crazy. So it is a 3-slot card with triple fans.
Right.
And this is which one is this?
That's the 1080 Ti Amp Edition.
Amp Edition. So people don't know, there goes Founders. For you guys, it's Founders, then the Amp Edition, then Amp Extreme.
Yes.
And then there's the Arctic
Storm, which we just recently announced. We don't have here, unfortunately, because the samples are on their way, and it's going to be available very soon. And the Arctic Storm, for those users out there who don't know about the Arctic Storm, is a 1080 or a Zotac graphics card based on NVIDIA GeForce chipset, where there's a 1080 Ti, and they want to know water to cool it themselves. So it's water block ready, comes pre-installed out of the box, and it's going to give you extreme cooling performance out of it.
Sweet, and so it uses like 1/4-inch fittings, so it's a pretty normal
standard fitting, G1/4 fittings. So if you already have a system that's already liquid cooled, and you want to swap to this faster version of the 1080 Ti graphics card, all you got to do is just simply swap out your graphics card since it's going to be using the standard fittings that's already available.
Sweet. Well, I was hoping that actually I'd get a sample. If I got it on Friday, I was going to build it into the system here. So for people that are joining us, we're looking at new Zotac products, the 1080 Ti's, as well as the little mini PCs. And there's a few questions about this system here, so I'll just kind of walk through what's in here so people know. This is the NZXT S340 Elite. Now I painted it blue. It doesn't come off the shelf with blue or like the wood color. But it's kind of built around a normal 240 radiator, all-in-one cooler. But I kind of threw it with the RGBs on just to show off some of the RGB features on the graphics card, because the graphics card has the Amp Extreme, which is quite substantial, has some really cool graphics features. So what is the name of like the graphics software that you're using, and what was kind of the thought about making sure it all looked like a RGB unicorn?
Well, the lighting itself, we typically call our Spectra lighting, and that's something where it allows the user to customize the lighting to match the rest of their system, which you have done here beautifully, to match the rest of the RGB. And it does support many different colors that you can match with your system as well. And in order to utilize the Spectra lighting features, you have to install the Zotac Firestorm utility. And once you have that installed, it's going to recognize the card that's installed in your system, and it's going to enable the feature that's only available for that model of Zotac graphics card.
Sweet. And so there's a couple different lighting areas. And the reason I wanted to put it into this case is we've got the G.Skill Trident Z RAM in here, which was the first RAM that really did full RGB directly from the motherboard. And I think it looks pretty cool. It's been super popular. We also have the most popular probably motherboard out there. That's the Strix Z270E in this case, and then I've got a lot of LEDs running off of it. So I kind of wanted to show that I think it was really awesome how Zotac did the colors, that they can actually match up really well with a system like this. So obviously I don't keep the system in RGB mode all the time, and it looks like Zotac offers a number of features to kind of dial in the colors, but I think the color is so important these days with how it looks. So it was really great to see Zotac doing some cool stuff like that.
Yeah, glad to hear, and I'm glad you mentioned that you brought the different zone lightings with the 1080 Ti Amp Extreme. So with this card here, you can adjust 3 different zones for your lighting. So you have the part where it has just the Zotac logo. That center part you can change to adjust different lighting modes, brightness, or different colors. And then you have the 2 sidebars next to it right there. You can also adjust that zone separately as well. And the last part where you can adjust and customize is the Zotac logo on the backplate. And that's one of the first features that we introduced with the backplate with the LED lighting module back on the 1070, 1080 of Amp Extreme line of graphics cards. and we brought it over here along with the 1080 Ti series here.
Sweet. Well, one of the interesting things about this is, Zotac's one of the smaller companies out there that makes graphics cards, but I've always really loved the products. And Zotac's pretty much a newer company in the scene, right?
Not actually. We've been around for almost 10 years.
Okay. But that's shorter time than say the 30, 40 years of.
Oh, yes, that's typically true, yeah.
But I think that's actually a good thing because it brought some sort of fresh thinking to the game. Wasn't Zotac the first that did an OC card out of the box?
Very long time ago, yes. I believe it might be the 6800 GT. So that's probably even before my time.
6800. So OC out of the box. And I think actually OC is one of the most misunderstood things, overclocking about graphics cards compared to CPUs. So in this system, we have a 7600K, which I overclocked to 5.0, but CPUs don't come overclocked out of the box. Graphics cards do, right? So if you can walk us through kind of what the story is with the Zotac overclocking graphics cards, where we're at, what is the founders at, and then kind of what you can potentially reach with this card?
Yeah, the founders, it comes, their reference clock speed is what NVIDIA typically provides for all their vendors or other board partners to release their graphics cards. So what we do to differentiate our graphics cards with other manufacturers is to make the graphics cards simply the fastest. So that means that the user doesn't need to do any type of fidgeting with the software. So out of the box, you're going to get core clock of 1645 and boost of 1759. So what NVIDIA did with the overclocking is they introduced their technology, what they call GPU boost. Now it's on their third generations with GPU boost 3.0. That typically takes over a lot of the overclocking hassles or customizations that a lot of the end users would need to do, and it's going to do it by itself. So it's always evaluating the performance of the graphics cards, the temperature, the load, the power performance, and it's going to adjust all those variables so that you can get the fastest performance. No matter what you're doing, what game you're doing, it's going to do it on its own.
Sweet. Well, why don't we pull up, I've got Ghost Recon Wildlands pulled up on the screen. If we can go over to Ghost Recon, I'll show a little demo. Now, Ghost Recon is a brutal game in terms of graphics. This game came out and it just crushes, lesser cards. So we got some fraps. You can see that we're over 60, and this is a 1440p monitor that's actually running G-Sync at 144 hertz. And so we're staying above 60 frames. I'm just messing around here, waiting to get killed.
You do a lot better than I would.
I actually don't have it. I'm left-handed, so I don't have the controls mapped the way that I want to. But so while I'm just messing around here and looking around, I'm not actually really hearing the card.
That's right.
It's not, unlike the last generation, not just the Zotac, but a lot of the older cards are a lot more, just loud as heck. So, obviously thermals is a massive part of these cards.
That is. So Zotac itself, we have a whole floor of engineers who are dedicated to engineering the cooling in our products. So whether it comes from our mini PCs to our graphics cards, they are very keen on the temperature performance, and as well as the noise performance as well. So
actually, if we can go back to the screen for a second, I want to show what we ended up with. GPU was kind of around 65 or so, right around over here. This is the Firestorm app from Zotac. So in my personal test, we were getting around 70 degrees, which 70 degrees Celsius for a graphics card running some big numbers. Seems like it's pretty impressive. It seems like it's got a lot of headroom as well. Is that kind of the goal, to kind of keep it at 70? Or keep it as cool as possible?
Well, one of the goals with the Amp Extreme is just to make everything extreme. So that comes to the performance, the cooling, the noise. So what you don't hear is because of our engineers carefully fine-tuning the fan and the performance and the cooling equipment that's being used on the Amp Extreme itself.
Sure.
So I guess not a lot of users would get the opportunity to see what's inside the cooling, but they would have to take it apart and see what's actually being manufactured in there. But the Ice Storm cooling that's being used on our card here, you can see it's fairly massive, but most of the bulk is taken up just by the massive aluminum heatsink itself, which is made of fairly light material.
Sure.
But what does most of the lifting for the cooling is the copper heat pipes that's in there. So it's a dynamic number. So for the TI Amp Extreme there itself, it has a total of 6 copper heat pipes. So it runs about maybe 4 8mm and 6mm of copper heat pipes. So that dynamic, formula of copper heat pipes gives it that very good temperature performance. So you're typically not going to see temperatures above 70, 71 degrees. And you have a very good case here, like you have with this open flowed system. You're going to get even better temperatures out there, and you're not going to hear the fans as well.
Yeah, so when I was testing it over the weekend, I just took this thing home, work, had to play some games. Was running about 2 gigahertz or 2,000 megahertz. Now that's, if people look up on the, they go to newegg.com and they check out the Amp Extreme, they're going to see the regular clock, they're going to see boost clock, and I haven't looked at it right now. Let me just actually pull it up while we're talking. So boost clock is 1759, but the numbers that I'm just getting out of the box are about 2,000.
Right.
So what's the discrepancy there? People are wondering, why is it actually a 2,000 card versus 1759?
Oh, one of the reasons is because of the NVIDIA GPU Boost 3.0 technology that dynamically overclocks your card when it sees the opportunity to. But one of the things that allows it to happen is the equipment that we used in there. So one thing that you can actually see on the back side of that card there is what we call power boost. Mm-hmm. What that does, it actually has a very high temperature sensitivity, or it can function in very high temperatures so that it keeps the card very stable in high temperatures. The other function of that little chipset back there is that it helps to filter the power coming in from the power supply to the card, so it has a clean feed of power. The other thing I wanted to mention that helps that as well is the 16+2 power phase. Mm-hmm. So you have, compared with the typical Founders Edition, you have only 8+2. So with the 8+2, you have less workers. So when you have less workers, each worker is going to have to work a little bit more to bring the power and deliver it to the different components on the graphics card. With 16+2, you have double the workers now. So they each have to work less to deliver the power to the components of the graphics cards. That means since they're being worked less, they generate less heat, and it gives you more stable performance.
And that's pretty huge. I mean, going from 8+2 to 16+2, that's a huge leap. Some other ones out there are like 10+2. Like, what does this one have? This is the regular Amp Edition?
The Amp Edition. That has 16+2 in there as well.
And combined with, some of the overclocking potential, it's there for overhead, it's there for potentially...
Typically, in the past, with 16 more power phases, the more power phases you have, it would better assist you in overclocking. Mm-hmm. These days, since the GPU Boost technology is there, overclocking is a little bit more complicated. Mm-hmm. So what the 16+2 power phases do for our graphics card is that it helps keep that maximum performance constant for a longer period of time. Yeah. And that helps it be one of the fastest performing graphics cards consistently in benchmark testing. Interesting.
So let's talk a little bit about price, which is, I think, something kind of interesting. The regular Founders is, how much is, give us the price range of the products.
I think Founders, they start out at $699, and then with the Amp Extreme, it comes out to about just $759. And then the Amp Edition right there, I believe is $739.
And so you go from $699 to $759. So for 60 more bucks, you're seeing a 25% rough increase in sort of clock speed. And I was looking at some numbers earlier, about 15% increase in frames per second, right? So that's a pretty good. So 60 bucks in terms of real world, what people are going to get, 15% additional performance. It seems like it's a pretty good.
Number. That's just in speed only.
That's just in speed,
you're also going to get even better temperatures, you get better noise profile, you get better features with the Spectra lighting. You can customize it. One thing I forgot to mention with the Spectra is that it's going to memorize your setting once you customize it. So some users out there, and we recognize it, they spend a lot of time trying to customize their case so that it looks exactly right with the rest of their system, whether it's going to be the brightness, the color, or whatever else that they do with their custom PCs. With the Spectra, it has a little MCU on board the card itself. Mm-hmm. So with that, it's going to memorize your settings. So all that time you spent is going to be brought right back up when you restart your system or if you power it back off. And even if you don't run the Firestorm software ever again, once you set those lightings, it's going to stay there.
Yeah. It's pretty, the aesthetics of the cards, I've always said, even from the last generation, look awesome. I think they're some of the best looking cards out there. The aesthetic design on these things are really, really great. The old ones had a yellow stripe on the top.
Oh, yes, I wanted to bring that up.
There used to be a big yellow stripe.
The striking yellow stripe, the beautiful yellow Zotac stripe. But a lot of users back there, we got that feedback saying even though it was beautiful, it didn't match with their system.
Yeah, so I think that makes sense.
We did listen to their feedback. So you see here in our 1080 Ti series of Zotac graphics cards, it's no longer yellow. It's more neutral in color, so it'll match more with the user systems and their color schemes.
Sweet. Well, if you hear me, it sounds like I'm playing games. I am. I actually got Overwatch pulled up over here. So we can, if you want to go over to the screen, we can see what kind of like real world numbers I'm actually getting here. I'm playing Zenyatta against computers. So, and you can see in the fraps, it's ranging between 150 or so and 200. Which, this is, again, of G-Sync 144 hertz. It's actually running at HD, I believe, resolution. So, for comp, for twitchy players who want to get the maximum performance, you're probably seeing screen tear. You're definitely seeing, oh my gosh. So what's happening with the screen tear that you're seeing at home is actually the difference between, the G-Sync is working on the monitor that I'm looking at, which is a 144 hertz monitor, versus the 30 frames that's coming out of the HDMI cable that's going to the streaming system here. So, something to keep in mind. But yeah, I mean, these are pretty big numbers. So for all the Overwatch fans, I think this is a pretty killer system, and getting right around being able to use a 144 hertz monitor. So yeah, let's jump out of this, and then let's actually talk a little bit about the mini boxes. So the small PCs.
Yes. So this is our Magnus line of gaming mini PCs.
Yep.
So you won't find many like it out there on the market, simply because these perform really well. So just as good as your gaming desktop counterparts that you're able to build yourself.
Sweet. So, and again, for people who are joining us, ask us your questions. We got the guys from Zotac here, Boo and Andrew, talking about cool new products. But one of the questions is, do the mini PCs have Thunderbolt 3?
These do not, but we do have other mini PCs out there that do have Thunderbolt 3 on there.
Cool. So these little things I've actually been a big fan of since they launched. These are VR-ready PCs, and last year I was doing some VR demos, and I would take these PCs, well, I took a whole bunch of stuff, gaming laptops, VR-ready laptops, and a few other things around. I had like 4 or 5 devices, including a custom computer, and I went to do a demo for people just to see what they thought. The ZBOX was the only thing that actually ended up working. Everything else failed, through just software issues, whatever it was, and this thing was like a bulletproof beast. So I think maybe a lot of people don't quite understand what this is. They see mini boxes, and a lot of them look fairly similar because you guys make hundreds of them. But is the idea behind this kind of making an ultimate little mini VR-ready PC?
Yes, originally that was the direction for this mini PC. We wanted to make it as small as possible, as powerful as possible. For those users out there who want to do VR and not have to lug around or bring around a very large system, very powerful system, by the way, to be able to play their VR. But not only is it just VR ready, it's also gaming ready as well. So you have systems that come with a 1060 inside, 1070, or even up to a 1080. So you have different selections where on different levels of performance and what you want.
No, it's pretty crazy. So one good thing, Zotac has a lot of smart design choices that were made in these things. And this isn't a little deal. This has double HDMI ports as well as double display ports.
Right.
Double HDMI and double display. What that means is that televisions have HDMI,
yes,
and VR is all HDMI. So a lot of the new graphics cards, including all the new modern series of cards, have 3 display ports and 1 HDMI, which makes it a lot harder to hook up your living room system to it. So that was kind of one of the reasons these things worked for me to be able to do VR demos, and just worked really well for people that I've recommended them to. That it actually has, it's thought out ahead of time to be a really solid little mini VR PC. But let's talk about the specs that are inside of these. These have which are these, the 7600T chips?
These
CPUs?
have the 7th gen Intel Core i5, 7500T, so desktop grade CPUs in there.
Yeah, and I think that's an important thing. They're not the mobile versions, but it is the 7700T, which is a 35 watt
35 watt
CPU, rather than the 65, which would be the regular 7600.
65 watts in this guy here.
So that's a 65 watts. So what are the specs in that guy?
This has the Intel Core 7th gen Intel Core i7 7700, so desktop grade CPU as well.
Yeah.
What's special about this guy, even though it's about the same size in width and length, height-wise, it's double the height of one of these little guys. And the main reason for that is that this system itself, which is very unique, is the liquid cooling inside.
Yeah, so talk to me about that. It's got liquid cooling for the CPU and for the GPU, right?
Yes, in one loop. So you're going to get extreme performance out of this little box here. So you won't find any other box like it out there.
Yeah.
And it's also going to be used as one of our official casting systems over at the Zotac Cut Master. That's going to be happening very soon.
It's one of the official what things?
Casters systems.
Oh, the caster system.
Yes,
so
they're going to be using these little guys here to cast the game
live.
live.
They're super sweet. I mean, I kind of want to see like they're perfect for like little mini systems for home. They just don't scream gamer. Wasn't the 10th anniversary didn't have LEDs that line up and everything?
The 10th anniversary does have LEDs that can light up. You can also change it, the color, the brightness as well. This one does as well. If you were to power it on, you'll see a Magnus logo just to the left of it. You can adjust the brightness, the color, or just simply turn it off if you don't need it.
Sweet. Let's go. I've got the image actually pulled up on my screen of the inside of this. Now this is pretty cool. So you can see we've got the GPU and CPU blocks right here. And then this is the liquid cooling unit up above. And it's all stacked inside this case. That's a pretty sweet design.
Yeah, this is our engineers going to work.
Yeah. I remember when it launched last year, it was white with a teal. The teal grill on top, but I guess that wasn't as popular as the old black version.
Yes, so it comes in any color if you prefer black.
Yeah. Well, I like the white and teal, obviously, with the custom PC that I got here.
Yeah, it'll match perfect with that. Actually.
I like the hipster colors. But it's one of these things where I think, maybe throw on some crazier colors, some different looks, and maybe it'd be, I love the designs on the PCs or on the graphics cards. But these things, I have been recommending them a bunch because they work so well for VR gaming and just gaming in general. There is a question: how much storage do you have on the mini PCs? And that actually brings up a question of like bare bones versus completed systems. So do you want to walk us through what that's like?
So we do like to give our end users a lot of options. So we do have different models for the users to choose from. The most affordable would be the bare bones, where it doesn't come with any memory, storage, or OS. So it allows the user to more of like a DIY. They can build their own system, bring their own memory, bring their own storage, and bring their own OS. So depending on the system, I'll just talk about these particularly right in front of me. So these can support a 2.5-inch hard drive or SSD. It also has a M.2 slot that can support NVMe or regular SATA-based M.2 SSDs.
And what are the temps like? Are there any numbers that you have about how these perform? Or
these are our gaming line mini PCs. So because of the graphics card and the desktop-grade CPUs in there, it's going to run a little bit warmer than our other mini PCs, but nothing where it's going to burn your hand when you touch. So it's still going to be cool to the touch exterior. It's still going to be whisper quiet. And you're going to expect temperatures between the mid to mid-70s.
Yeah, that was actually one of the things that I found when I was demoing them, that they were not loud. I was expecting them to just get crazy loud for just blasting, VR nonstop, which is really intense. It is really taxing.
And that's really important. I'm glad you brought that up, because with these type of little form factor mini PCs, a lot of the end users out there is going to think that it's going to run really hot, it's going to run really loud, and the performance is just going to degrade over time because it just runs too hot. And our engineers were keen on that idea as well. So they focus on the engineering of the cooling and the noise performance. So you're not going to have any of those issues at all with these. So you're probably not going to know that it's even on once you start using it.
It's pretty cool. Any thoughts of like doing custom like replaceable top panels? I actually wanted to, for PAX, I wanted to do like a mod on one of these things, or like paint something crazy, or maybe do something for BlizzCon.
That would be a great idea. It's just that with the way our mini PCs are designed, the top cover is just not removable.
Oh, it's not? Okay.
It's not. The bottom panel is, so just simply 2 screws from the back of the system.
Yeah, let's take a look at that.
Once you remove that, you're able to get access to both the memory and the storage for you to install. So easy access and toolless entry is one of the things that we also try to incorporate with our designs.
So how do I open this sucker up?
You just want to slide it out this way right here.
Let's go for it.
There you go, and it just pops right off. And this is where you install your 2.5-inch bay, your M.2 here. With this little daughter board, it's going to auto-detect whether you have a NVMe, and if you do, this guy's going to turn on. And if you're just using a regular M.2 SATA SSD, this guy won't be lit, so it's going to know it's just going to be running SATA. So you have dual channel memory for DDR4 up to 32 gigabyte of memory. And we also installed, this is a new one where we introduced on the EN10K series, the ones running with 7th gen Intel processors. It's a little micro fan here. This helps keep all these modules and components here nice and cool. And it's going to be fairly quiet at 12, so you're not going to notice it at all.
Yeah, that's pretty crazy. Let's just hold this guy up. Just put that up like that. Yeah, so is this double-sided, or is this, you put your NVMe there?
No, it's going to start here. So it's going to support different size of M.2. There's going to be 40 millimeter, 60 millimeter, or 80 millimeter. So it's going to install just on one board there.
Sweet. And then, so yeah, SODIMM RAM's here, RAM. And what are the capacities? You can go up to what, 32 gigs?
Up to 32.
And then obviously you can go up to, I think the largest is 2 terabytes right now for the
2.5
M.2. Yeah. And then same thing with the rest of it. That's pretty crazy.
So going back to that one user's question, I talked about the bare bones, but we also have ones where it comes complete with the Windows solution. So depending on the mini PC, for these guys here, it'll come with 8 gigs of DDR4 memory, a 120 gig M.2 SATA SSD, and a 1 terabyte hard drive in there, 2.5-inch hard drive, pre-installed with Windows 10 Home, 64-bit. So depending on the user, especially for the Windows solution, it's ready to go out of the box.
Yeah, so what are the prices for the bare bones versions versus the Windows you got?
It can start ranging up between $899 for the bare bones, all the way up to $1899 for the bare bones of our Magnus EN1080K, especially when you want the best performance out there for the mini PCs.
For sure, for sure. And what are the versions with everything installed?
That would be this guy. I believe it's going to be about $2,400 for the full Windows solution for this. This one's going to be about, I believe, around $1,600. Don't quote me on the price. Just double check Newegg's website.
Yeah, it's go to Newegg.com, and it's for the people out there that don't know, the original Steam box was made by Zotac.
It is.
Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah. So there is a lot of history with Valve and kind of doing on the gaming side. I know that we actually ended up, HTC came by here to talk about VR, and they saw these, and you guys have been working a lot with HTC and VR, and obviously Valve for Steam VR. But they are kind of like the perfect little mini PC for VR. I know this isn't the official like Vive or the Steam VR PC, but it should be. But in any case, a couple more things, couple more questions. Brandon from YouTube says, is this more like a Raspberry Pi than a gaming PC?
No. This is many more times more powerful than a Raspberry Pi.
Yeah, this is a full-on gaming PC, even though it does not have red stripes everywhere.
Just very, very compact. It's not something where users can build themselves. I can understand where some people are going to say it's going to be very expensive for what it is, but at the same time they're going to say, oh, I can just build this myself for even less amount of dollars and still get the same, if not more performance. But at the same time, you're not going to be able to build something this small, this compact, this powerful in a little package.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. Question from Mick on YouTube. Can a single Zotac 1080 Ti Amp Extreme graphics card run games at 4K ultra settings, 60 frames per second, and play VR games?
That depends on the game that you're playing.
Yeah, it's big time. So Ghost Recon, no, we were doing that on 1080p, getting over 60 or 1440p. But other games you can. And
it really depends on your title, but especially for the more current modern titles, you're probably not going to get 4K ultra details at 60 frames per second.
Yeah.
Those type of performance, you might need to run SOI.
Yeah, and games like Ghost Recon or like Arma, they let you do the draw distance to like 200 miles out. So they basically have settings where you can just crush any card that exists if you want to. Just be crazy like that. And one other thing I actually wanted to point out as we're talking about the graphics card that I think is cool, if you can go back to this system over here, you can see there's not a lot of sag on this card. This is a gigantic 3-slot monster card. In previous generations, had a bit of sag. A lot's changed in terms of like the way that motherboards are designed. In this case, it has slots that are constructed to be really strong. But for people who are wondering about giant cards and GPU sag, obviously there's little braces, but I'm really excited to see that there's not a huge issue with that here, and that's a thing. So I can really strongly recommend this system, this card for just like an ultimate awesome desktop system. And this one here comes out around $2,000 with the 7600 K and obviously the Zotac 1080 Ti Amp Extreme. All right.
Since you brought that up, the card itself is a 2.5, 3-slot card. It is fairly bulky, but most of the bulk itself, as I mentioned before, is made from the lightweight aluminum heatsink there. So if you actually hold it in your hand, you're not going to feel the weight that you actually think it's going to weigh just by looking at the card itself.
Yeah, and honestly, I mean, it fills up 3 slots. A 2.5 card ultimately is technically like a 3-slot card because what are you going to put in that half slot? But that's not a bad thing. I mean, I want bigger the better. Make it a 4 or 5-slot card because it means that you're getting additional performance and additional headroom. Question from Daniel on YouTube: what are the OC capabilities of the CPU GPU? Well, on this one, in this system, it's all system dependent. A 240 radiator, the 7600. Got that up to 5.0, which is a 31% overclock. On the GPU, like we mentioned before, this one's currently just automatically up to 2 gigahertz. That's from the stock 15 and change of the founders.
Yes.
So 1500 megahertz to 2 gigahertz, 2000 megahertz, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, and it's also going to depend on your silicon lottery as well.
Yeah. So that's something for people that don't know. Different chips. This is for CPUs, GPUs, phones, everything that has a chip in it. Differs between chip to chip. Usually, though, I imagine that Zotac is binning chips in order to find the best ones to put in the best cards.
Right. So that's why our MP streams can get those cards out of the box, because we found the GPUs that can support those speeds right away.
Yeah, so you line up all the chips and you look at them and you go, this one's the best, this one's the fastest.
This one.
Yeah. So that's pretty good. Well, I think we're about covered unless there's some more questions. Guys, you can shout out any questions online and we'll ask the guys here. Why don't we actually talk about what's coming up at Computex? Because it's kind of a big year at Computex.
It is.
And Computex, for people that don't know, is sort of like the CES of Asia, right?
Over at Taiwan, yes.
Yeah.
So since we were talking about our 1080 Ti MP stream, it's actually going to be the official graphics card in our Zotac Cup Masters official gaming system that the pro teams are going to be playing and competing in Dota 2. And as I mentioned earlier, the Magnus EN1080K is going to be the official system of our casters, who's going to be live streaming the Zotac Cup Masters when it happens. And of course, I have Andrew here to talk about it, introduce us to explain a little bit more about the Zotac Cup Masters.
The Zotac Cup Masters actually is a global Dota 2 tournament.
Mm-hmm.
We're actually flying 8 teams from all around the world. 2 from Southeast Asia, 2 from China, 2 from America, and 2 from Europe. And what's crazy is you might think that there's going to be a lot of professional teams in this, but actually a lot of, we held open qualifiers since March, and actually a lot of second place teams, underdog teams, actually beat the top tier 1 teams and actually made it to the finals. So it's definitely going to be a very interesting tournament. It's going to be from May 30th to June 3rd, with the grand finals being on June 3rd. After, we have teams such as Fnatic, Team MP, Newbie, Invictus Gaming attending. So it's definitely, you shouldn't miss it.
Yeah, it's pretty good. And this is the first year that Computex is doing this, right?
Yes. First year that Computex actually is going to have a major esports event. Also, after this Dota 2 tournament, we're going to be having this VR esports exhibition, where we have 2 top players from the game Smashbox Arena.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to be demoing, along with 2 players from Taiwan, demoing a little esports match against each other with our VR Go backpack, which is basically a backpack that makes esports capable because it's tetherless.
Yeah, we tested it out here. It's basically the the 1070 version, but with the i7 in it.
Yes.
And spoiler alert, it's pretty much the best VR backpack. It is a very, very niche product, a VR backpack, but it was really well designed. I mean, from the fact that it had more than 1 HDMI port, that's really useful. So that's pretty cool, but VR esports, that seems like something that's up and coming. We tested out some games recently. There's some other ones that are out. They're like, wow, this is like Ender's Game. We're going to be living in an esports VR future, and it's kind of terrifying.
It's actually new as well. So
yeah.
This will actually be one of the first VR esports that's going to be leading the way to hopefully many more esports. Another venue of esports, actually.
That's right, kids. So VR esports is just starting, meaning that you can get in on it. You can be the first. You can help launch it.
This would be the first one that's going to be happening.
And then Zotac can sponsor you with your mad esports VR experience.
Yes, they're going to be playing with the VR Go. So you can see these guys physically maneuvering out in the real world, or they're going to be battling out in the virtual world. So you're going to see both views at the same time to see people actually interact and how they play.
Oh, that's pretty cool. Is there like a green screen, mixed reality setup?
It's not going to be a green screen now. You're just going to see them live on the live stream.
Yeah, and what game is it again?
It's going to be
Smashbox Arena.
Smashbox Arena.
Yeah, it's going to be a first-person shooter where they actually try to kill the other guy first before you get killed.
Not give him hugs, but shoot him in the face like esports is meant to be. Yes. And it's pretty cool that this is happening. A lot of games have been indie sort of stuff, but once we see like the Dota 2s of esports, which doesn't really make sense, but obviously like the CSGOs or the Overwatches of esports, that would be really cool. And I think that's going to happen once these big titles start happening for VR. It's going to change the landscape.
Oh, definitely.
So, got a few more questions online, and then we can just wrap this up. What is the CPU GPU capabilities of the mini PC? I misinterpreted the question. Thought it was about the big old PC, but the mini PCs. So, can they be overclocked? What is kind of your answer to that?
They're not overclockable. So they're meant to be used ready to go out of the box, and it's going to give you that desktop gaming performance. So you don't need to mess with it. It's going to give you that very quiet noise profile, and it's going to give you that gaming that you expect from any type of gaming mini PC. Right?
Yeah. Like for example, look at the size difference of these things. Like the graphics card is practically, it's not quite the same size, but they're very close in size. So yeah, you're not going to be able to get overclocked GPU performance out of a thing that's that small. Same thing with the CPU. We got big old radiators in this thing to hit those overclocks.
Yeah. So these are 35-watt CPUs in there, 7th gen Intel cores, whereas this guy has a 65-watt Intel processor. They're all desktop grade. They are socketed, but the way that we've manufactured is that the end users are not able to upgrade either the CPU or the GPU itself.
Yeah, and so it's a pretty cool, nifty solution. All right, guys. Well, let's wrap this up. I think this has been pretty awesome. And can I hold on to the Zotac graphics card for a while?
Sure. I just won't say anything. I'll just say this got lost on the way.
It just fell out of the case and got lost in the studio. Cool, guys. Well, thank you so much for dropping by. And we will be doing some more from Computex. So for everyone who's watching at home, visit unlocked.newegg.com. Keep an eye out on newegg.com. And obviously visit Zotac for information about the upcoming esports tournament. And
specifically Twitter at Zotac Cup.
At Zotac Cup on Twitter.
Yes, and we're going to be streaming on Twitch. But
Yep.
you'll definitely find all the information and our giveaways through our Twitter. We're doing a lot. We're giving away 5 of those.
5 of those? Jeez, okay. Well, yeah,
all
check
you
that
gotta do
out.
is just watch.
You just have to watch.
All you have to do is watch, and I assume under your name and all that good stuff. And probably be somewhere in a specific country.
Oh, it's actually, it's global. The
Oh,
giveaway
it's
is global. So anybody can.
Sweet. All right, well, there you go. So check it out and visit Newegg to purchase any of these fine products. But keep an eye out on Unlocked as well, unlocked.newegg.com for more reviews and content about these awesome PC parts. So thank you guys for coming by, and we will see you guys next time.